Number 1.
Megan was last seen in Seward, Alaska on July 7, 1973. She was a student at the Seward Skills Center, now called the Alaska Vocational Technical Center, and was last seen walking out of a dormitory laundry room. She has never been heard from again. All of Megan's personal belongings, including her identification, were left behind. Her roommate searched for her for 3 days before reporting her disappearance to police. Investigators believe the serial killer Robert Hansen may have been involved in Megan's case and in the disappearances of Mary Thill, Roxanne Eastland and Andrea Altieri. In 1984, he confessed to 17 murders and 30 rapes over the previous 12 years. He led authorities to the grave sites, but only 12 bodies were recovered. A map in Hansen's home had marks on it matching the locations of his victims' bodies, but there were more than 17 marks on it, suggesting he had more victims than he admitted to. Most of the women he is known to have killed were prostitutes or exotic dancers. Hansen admitted he was in Seward the day Megan disappeared, but denied any involvement in her case. Nevertheless, police believe she was one of his victims. He died in 2014 while serving 461 years to life in prison for his crimes. A photo of him is posted with this case summary. Megan was born and raised in Delta Junction, Alaska. She enjoyed horses, motorcycles, rock music, and fishing and hunting on the Yukon River with her family. Her mother died in 1996, but her brothers are still alive and hope for a resolution. Her case remains unsolved.
Number 2.
A headstone was placed Tuesday night near a previously unmarked grave at the Lexington City Cemetery, memorializing the decades-old tragic death of a 2-year-old. On February 7, 1966, Anita Carol Barnhill of Lexington was rushed to the hospital after family members reported the child had fallen out of a high chair. She died 3 days later, and her death was initially ruled as an accident. In 1999, at the prompting of local journalist Brian Queen, her case was reopened, and the medical examiner found that the child's injuries were not consistent with those of a fall. Instead, Anita died from severe trauma as a victim of child abuse by a caregiver. No charges were filed in the case, and Anita was buried in Lexington City Cemetery in an unmarked grave. Some 52 years later, just ahead of what would have been Anita's September 1 birthday, that grave garnered attention as the Community United Efforts Center for Missing Persons placed a headstone donated by Hainline Monument Company at Anita's grave, formally putting her to rest. She never had a permanent marker, and we just thought it was appropriate to have one for her after she's been here since '66, said Queen, who now works as a volunteer with the Q Center. Pastor Matt Smith from Holly Grove Lutheran Church spoke at the ceremony, which was attended by community members, including Anita's youngest sister Tracy and cousin Beverly Fine, members of local law enforcement and Q Center staff. Also remembered at the headstone dedication was Anita's little sister Donna Barnhill, who disappeared from the city in March of 1981. She was last seen walking to a friend's house. Friends, family and law enforcement have spent the past 37 years searching for clues in the disappearance of the missing 13-year-old girl, but to no avail. It's important to keep this case in the public eye and to bring resolution to this case, said Q founder Monica Kaysen. This child's death was tragic and has gone almost unnoticed for all these years. Even more tragic as her sister remains one of the oldest missing child cases in North Carolina. We are not going away and giving up until she is found and laid to rest, with her sister Kaysen added. Donna would now be 51 years old, and Lexington police are still seeking information related to her disappearance. The Q Center has also begun conducting formal searches for Donna for the first time since her disappearance. Fine said she and other family members have tried to continue their own searches for Donna, in addition to law enforcement efforts. We've looked and searched and walked, and I'll keep looking, said Fine, who was 17 when Donna went missing. This year has been one open door after another, said Dana Hamilton, another Q Center volunteer. Hamilton explained that things came together after she moved back to Lexington, connected with Brian, got involved with the Barnhill case, and was able to help get the headstone made. I feel like we're getting closer to finding her sister, she added. In addition to honoring Anita, Hamilton explained that the Q Center hopes that the emotion of formally laying Anita to rest might encourage family members or anyone who has information about Donna's disappearance to come forward. Anyone with information regarding the disappearance should contact the Lexington Police Department or submit a tip to the Q Center.
Number 3.
Amy departed from the Lander, Wyoming apartment she shared with her husband of 1 year, Steve Bechtel, at approximately 9:30 a.m. on July 24, 1997, to run errands for the house they had just purchased and were going to move into. She was seen at a local photo shop at approximately 2:30 p.m. that afternoon. Employees at the store said she seemed to be in a hurry and looked at her watch several times. Authorities believe Amy left the business and drove to Shoshone National Forest to check the course of an upcoming 10-kilometer run planned by her gym. She have been seen running along the loop road. A footprint similar to her sneaker was found there, but it was destroyed before police could attempt to match it. Amy is an avid runner. She has never been seen again. Steve returned to their residence at approximately 4:30 p.m. He had been socializing with friends and moving items into his new house all day. Steve was not initially concerned for Amy, but he summoned the authorities when his wife did not arrive home by 10:30 p.m. Amy's white Toyota station wagon was discovered abandoned along Loop Road in the Wind River Mountains near Shoshone National Park shortly after her disappearance. Her keys, her $120 sunglasses, and her to-do list for the day were inside the vehicle, but her Green Eagle Creek wallet was missing. There was no other sign of Amy at the scene, nor were there any indications of foul play. Investigators began focusing on Steve and searched his journals for possible clues as to his wife's whereabouts. Steve wrote about an apparent need for control in his journal and also penned an undated poem that revolved around murdering a person and then hiding the remains. A woman who was camping in Shoshone National Park on the day Amy was last seen told authorities that she witnessed a truck similar to Steve's vehicle speeding through the park during the early evening hours. The woman stated that she saw an unidentified blonde-haired woman in the passenger seat. It is not known if the incident is related to Amy's case. Acquaintances of the couple gave conflicting statements about their relationship. Some described it was idyllic, but others stated that Steve was jealous and often belittled Amy, and that her demeanor changed whenever she was around him. Steve's attorney advised him to stop cooperating with law enforcement and refuse a polygraph test. Steve maintains his innocence and believes that authorities focused on him due to a lack of suspects and evidence in Amy's disappearance. He was interviewed only once by authorities. He refused to speak with them further after he said the questions turned accusatory. Steve remarried several years after Amy vanished and still lives in the house they purchased days before her disappearance. A suspect in Amy's case is Dale Wayne Eaton, who is presently the only inmate on Wyoming's death row. He was convicted of the 1988 rape and murder of an 18-year-old Lisa Marie Kimmel. Investigators believe Eaton may be the so-called Great Basin Killer, the serial killer whom they think was responsible for the murders of at least 9 women in Colorado, Wyoming, Utah and Nevada between 1983 and 1997. His brother claims Eaton was in the Lander area at the time Amy went missing. Eaton has refused to discuss Amy's disappearance and has never been charged in any other cases besides Kimmel's. Amy graduated from the University of Wyoming in 1995. She is described as shy, quiet, disciplined and goal-oriented. She enjoys rock climbing and amateur photography in addition to running and hoped to someday be an Olympic marathoner. Her family continues to search for her, though her father died after her disappearance. Amy's case remains unsolved. Foul play is suspected.
Number 4.
Shannon was last seen at approximately 12:30 p.m. in her hometown of Owensboro, Kentucky on July 6, 1986. She was walking from 2nd and Poplar Streets to 12th and Haynes Streets to visit a family friend, John Rainier, who lived approximately 2 miles from her location at that time. Shannon never arrived at her destination and has not been heard from again. A few days after Shannon's disappearance, a man who identified himself as Dwayne called her mother and said he and Shannon had run away to get married. The caller has never been identified, and the message is now thought to be a hoax, possibly made to mislead the investigation. Another Owensboro teenager, David Dwayne Bell, who was addressed by his middle name, disappeared a few days after Shannon did. They knew each other and were together at a mutual friend's home the day before she disappeared. Investigators believe the cases may be linked, and Dwayne possibly had knowledge of her disappearance. Dwayne and Shannon's disappearances may be related to the abduction of a 23-year-old woman who disappeared from Owensboro on June 17, 1986. Her body was found near a boat ramp on October 2 of that year. However, no connections have been proven. Authorities have long suspected that John Rainier was involved in Shannon's case. He is a convicted murderer and sex offender and a former friend of the Bell family. He maintains his innocence and claims Dwayne and his father, who was also called David Dwayne Bell and went by David, were involved in Shannon's disappearance. Rainier claims Dwayne confessed to strangling Shannon in 1986 and implicated his father. Rainier stated he tape recorded the confession and turned it over to police. The tape was apparently documented in police files but never saved, and records of it were not found until the fall of 2005. Raniere stated he planned to kill Dwayne and David after hearing the confession, but never got a chance to do so. He has passed a lie detector test about his role in Shannon and Dwayne's disappearance. David, who moved to Arizona shortly after his son's disappearance, maintains his innocence in Shannon's case and stated that he did not believe Dwayne was involved in it either. He theorized that Raniere caused Shannon's disappearance and Dwayne found out about it and was murdered to ensure his silence. Investigators still believe Raniere was complicit in Shannon's disappearance, whether or not the supposed confession is accurate. Authorities also stated David gave inconsistent accounts of the events leading up to Dwayne's disappearance, but he has not been charged in that case or Shannon's. Shannon was a student at Owensboro High School in 1986. She made good grades and had a steady boyfriend. She was initially thought to be a runaway, but foul play is now suspected in her case. In 2005, authorities searched for her body in a field across the railroad tracks near Kentucky 279. The search turned up no evidence, but investigators feel that Shannon's body was in the field at some point. Her disappearance remains unsolved.
Number 5.
Toya departed from her family's residence at the Lafayette Homes, a public housing project in the 200 block of South Spring Street in Baltimore, Maryland, on March 24, 1982. She came home from school, and her mother gave her a snack and permission to play outside. Toya's mother left the house at 6:15 p.m. While she was gone, Toya left to walk to a grocery store 2 blocks away at the corner of Go Street and South Carolyn Street. Near the store, she stopped to talk to her mother's ex-boyfriend and one of his male friends. Toya apparently never arrived home from the store. She wasn't allowed to walk there by herself and had told her sister she was going to do it anyway while her mother was out and buy candy. She was described as a quiet, well-behaved child, won trophies at school for regular attendance and participation in school activities. This was the first time she had ever disobeyed her mother. When Toya's mother arrived home at 7:30 p.m., Toya was missing. She has been heard from again. Toya was in the 3rd grade at City Springs Elementary School in 1982. She lived with her mother, her 2 brothers and her sister. She was supposed to be the flower girl at her mother's wedding ceremony 3 days after she disappeared. Her mother, Annette Stanley, initially believed her ex-boyfriend had taken Toya in order to convince Stanley to start seeing him again. She repeatedly asked him about Toya, but he said he didn't have her and didn't know what had happened to her. Stanley said she went ahead with her wedding on schedule because she thought this would encourage her ex-boyfriend to give Toya back. After that marriage ended, she renewed a relationship with her ex-boyfriend and married him. She said she did this because she still believed he knew where Toya was. Stanley left the man again only a few months into their marriage. He is now deceased. Stanley is still alive and still lives in the area and hopes that her daughter may yet be found. Little information is available in Toya's case, but foul play is suspected.
Number 6.
Stephen was last seen playing with his family's 2 dogs in the 2100 block of Holly Drive in Benton Harbor, Michigan on February 15, 2001, between 7 and 8 p.m. He was about half a block away from his residence in the 2100 block of Holly Drive at the time of his disappearance. He has never been heard from again. Stephen's mother was preparing dinner while he was out with their dogs and reported his disappearance afterwards. Temperatures in the area were below freezing and remained very cold over the next several days, and Stephen wasn't wearing a hat or gloves. He could not have survived for long outdoors without shelter. Stephen's footprints led past an iced-over pond near his home to Harbor Haven Ministries on Irving Street, 1 block south of Holly Drive. Late in the evening 3 days after Stephen's disappearance, his older dog, a German Shepherd Chow mix, returned home. The dog apparently led his owners to a nearby pond, but no evidence of Stephen's whereabouts was located in the area. The following day, his 6-month-old German Shepherd puppy was located near Blue Creek, a mile and a half north of Stephen's home. Stephen completed a 5-day suspension from Hull Elementary School shortly before his disappearance. School administrators stated that he defended himself against another student during an altercation. Both boys were suspended. Stephen is described as a good student, and the incident marked the first time he was disciplined. He was in the 6th grade at the time of his disappearance. His teachers and classmates stated he was a quiet boy who had few friends. He lived on a dead-end street in Benton Harbor with little traffic and was familiar with the area. Stephen has relatives living near his home and was well known to the neighbors as well. His house was torn down in 2005, and his parents have since moved to Hager Township, Michigan. Authorities searched 4 miles of Blue Creek and as well as the pond behind Harbor Haven Ministries in May 2001, but failed to produce any evidence of Stephen's whereabouts. Investigators searched another area of woods near the southwestern Michigan Regional Airport in November 2002, but no evidence was located. In February 2004, Stephen was reportedly seen at Midway Airport in Chicago, Illinois, but the individual sighted turned out to someone else. Investigators have investigated various theories in Stephen's case, such as that he was abducted or ran away from home. No clues to his whereabouts have been discovered, and Stephen's case remains unsolved.
Number 7.
The mother of a Texas teen who reportedly went missing from a Dickinson construction site is offering a $5,000 reward for information that would lead to his whereabouts. According to Jolene Stubbs, 16-year-old Edward Ashton Stubbs disappeared on June 17 from a job site north of Walmart. From that point on, his path is unknown. Jolene Stubbs, who lives in El Paso, Texas, said Tuesday in a phone interview that she believes either someone is helping her son or he has been abducted and is being held against his will. She also believes he could still be in Dickinson. "I believe he got angry because of something that happened on the job and he walked off," Jolene Stubbs said. Jolene Stubbs had put her son on a bus from El Paso to Fargo in early June. He was to work for a construction company with his cousin, who lived in Fargo. The construction company sent the two to Dickinson. Neither Jolene Stubbs nor her sister-in-law, Julie Stubbs, knew the name of the construction company. Jolene Stubbs said her son left behind his wallet, money and identification when he walked off the job site. He was suspected to have boarded a bus in Dickinson en route to Fargo. Despite reports that Edward Stubbs had stopped at his cousin's apartment on June 20, detectives from both the Fargo and Dickinson police departments said Tuesday there is no definitive evidence that ever happened. Lieutenant Joel Vettel of the Fargo Police Department said when Jolene Stubbs flew to Fargo from Texas and visited with police to report her son as missing, she also contacted media outlets in Fargo. Vettel said that generated about 20 supposed sightings. "We followed up on those," Vettel said. "None turned out to be legitimate as far as him being here. There has been no really concrete evidence that he was here after he was reported missing." Julie Stubbs, who lives in Fargo, said she distributed missing posters with her nephew's face and information on them around Dickinson and claims to have spoken with a Hispanic man at a Mexican food vendor who said he had seen Edward Stubbs. The man described to her what the boy was last seen wearing. "I handed him a poster and he said, 'I saw this kid,' Julie Stubbs said. Before I even told him anything, he described to me the blue sweater." Neither Vettel nor Officer Terry Estreich, an investigator with the Dickinson police, said they have been contacted by Jolene Stubbs with information that someone in Dickinson had reportedly seen Edward Stubbs. Jolene Stubbs said she hasn't contacted the detectives because she is not convinced a man who reported seeing her son in Dickinson was telling the truth. "To my knowledge, we have not had any new leads for a couple weeks," Vettel said. Jolene Stubbs said her son didn't have the best health but would not expand further on the nature of his ailments. Vettel said there is a possibility that Edward Stubbs has mental health issues. Regardless of where her son is, Jolene Stubbs said she just wants to speak with him again. "If this kid can just call me for 10 seconds, anyone who has him or just him, just one phone call to tell me he's alive and okay," she said. In December 2018, a resident surveying private land in northeastern Dickinson found a human skull. It was identified as Ashton's in September 2019. His death is under investigation.
Number 8.
It has been nearly half-century since a Maine mom has seen or heard from her 16-year-old daughter, Cathy Moulton, vanished without a trace. It's one of the oldest cold cases in the state. News Center Maine sat down with law enforcement and Cathy Moulton's mother in hopes of finding out why she mysteriously disappeared. The year is 1971. So long ago President Richard Nixon was in office. On a cool and crisp September night, Cathy Moulton, a beautiful and popular Maine teenager, disappeared. Not a day has gone by that Cathy's mother, Claire Moulton, doesn't think of her daughter. "We love her and we miss her." Moulton remembers her 16-year-old daughter as kind-hearted and loving. Cathy used to sit with elderly neighbors and look after them, her mom says. She also loved to make her own clothes and write poetry. That year, the Rolling Stones' hit song, Brown Sugar, was topping the charts and Cathy loved to dance, her mom says. On the day she went missing, Friday, September 24, Cathy was looking forward to attending a dance with her classmates that evening. Portland Police Department, Lieutenant Robert Martin said, "This is pure speculation, but for Cathy to be missing this long, something must have happened to her." Cathy, a junior, got home from Deering High School in Portland and had to run a few errands. According to Lieutenant Martin, Cathy needed a new pair of pantyhose to go along with the pantsuit she made for the dance. She asked her mother for money, and her father, Lyman Moulton, who has since passed away, gave her a ride. He dropped her off on Forest Avenue, less than a mile from her home, said Lieutenant Martin. After shopping, Lieutenant Martin said, Cathy stopped by Starbird Music Store to talk with a classmate. She told a girlfriend she was going home to take a shower and then meet her at the dance. Cathy never made it home. Police said her parents called to report her missing when she did not return for dinner. Moulton said she set rules for her 3 daughters. Cathy was the oldest. "If you're going to be late for supper, you must call home." Lieutenant Martin said, "This is pure speculation, but for Cathy to be missing this long, something must have happened to her." To this day, no one knows what happened to Cathy. There have been numerous tips. None of them have panned out. Cathy's mother said, "Not knowing has been a burden on our family ever since." According to Cathy's mother, a teenager that lived in their neighborhood told her that a friend of his, an older boy, gave Cathy a ride the night she disappeared. That neighborhood boy was not the only person with a story about Cathy getting into a car with a boy. Moulton said a woman who worked at a gas station in Presque Isle claimed she saw Cathy that Friday night with 2 boys. She told Cathy's mom one of the boys escorted her daughter to the gas station bathroom and stood guard outside the door, then walked Cathy back to the car. Cathy's mother said, police checked out this story and confirmed that Cathy did get into a car with a boy. According to Cathy's mom, police said the boy picked up Cathy and asked her to ride with him to pick up his friend. Years later, police thought they tracked down the driver, only to find out he passed away. To this day, no one really knows what happened to the vibrant Portland teenager. Investigators said they are not giving up on solving this case. "We'd like to bring closure for her mom," said Lieutenant Martin. Cathy was last seen walking down Forest Avenue, and she was about a mile away from her home near the Woodford's Corner area. At the time of her disappearance, she was wearing a navy all-weather coat and brown shoes. Police said she was carrying a unique item, a reversible multicolored handbag that her family bought her during a vacation to Mexico just weeks before she vanished. Police said they believe someone holds the clue to this decade-old missing person case. If you have any information on Cathy Moulton's disappearance, please call the Portland Police Department.